Shalom, shalom. Welcome to Ma'oz Israel. On today's episode, we will continue to discuss Israel at war, and we'll answer some of the difficult questions like who are the Palestinians? Stay tuned. Shalom. Welcome to Ma'oz Israel. We're continuing our series on Israel at war. There's always a lot of attention on Israel and the Middle East because of the atrocities of October 7th, 2023. Because of the war with Hamas, of course, now there's a bigger spotlight on Israel more than ever. A lot of Christians are asking us to cover topics and answer questions because they want to understand more about what is happening in Israel. And one of the best questions we're being asked is, who are the Palestinians? Right away, I'll tell you that historically, there is no such thing as Palestine. The idea that there is a people group with an ancient history called the Palestinians who have an ancient land called Palestine is simply a myth. The complicated thing, however, is that this fiction is now understood to be so intertwined with this invented people group that we have basically have no option, and we're forced to use this phrase to refer to the people who are living in areas of the land of Israel and who are ethnically from an Arab background whose recent ancestors are from nearby Arab countries. It is not uncommon for new people groups to emerge over time, but in the case of the Palestinians, it is more of a strategic formation on the destruction of one people group rather than the restoration of an ancient one, like in the case of Israel. So to understand its origins, let's delve into the history. This term was coined by the Roman Emperor Hadrian in AD 135, following his destruction of Jerusalem during the Bar Kokhba revolt, which is an uprising by the Jews in Israel. Frustrated by the persistent Jewish revolts in the region against Rome, Hadrian sought to erase Jewish identity from the land of Israel. Consequently, he renamed Jerusalem, Aelia Capitolina, and the land of Israel as Palestine, deriving its name from Israel's arch enemies, who were the ancient Philistines. So why would Rome do this? Why would they rename Israel after their arch enemy, the Philistines? So, for example, when a sports team wants to disrespect another team, we see it all the time. They might call that team's field or city by their own home team name, letting them know that they aren't in charge. So the Philistines themselves are believed by most scholars to be of Greek origin from Crete. And it's a fact that they have no connection with present-day Arabs. The Philistines were wiped out in 600 BC by the Babylonians. And the term Palestine was used for millennia without a connection to a precise geographic definition, which is not uncommon. We're using the terms like Midwest to refer to a general geographical area. So no precise definition existed for Palestine because none was needed. Since the Roman era, the name lacked political significance. No nation ever had that name. There's never been a president or a king of Palestine. There's no government, no famous people have ever come from ancient Palestine. There is no long, rich, ancient history to Palestine as is being taught. For some reason, the name Palestine just stuck. One thing we know is that there are no Arabs in the land when Rome changed the name. And therefore, the name has nothing to do with Arabs who now call themselves Palestinians. When going from modern-day languages to Latin to Greek, we then see the biblical context with the same name. They're using the same name, Philistines, which is very bizarre. If anyone has ever read the story of David and Goliath, why would anyone want to associate themselves with the Philistines? And when we see the fate of the Philistines, it's one more reason to probably drop the name. Over time, Palestine became the commonly used term to denote the biblical land of Israel. You even see it in biblical maps and many other historical pieces of artwork. that call this area, which was Israel, Palestine. Prior to 1948, a Palestinian typically referred to a Jewish resident of the land of Israel, also known as Palestine. However, with the establishment of Israel as a nation in 1948, Jews embraced the biblical term Israel and became known as Israelis to denote their reborn nation. It wasn't until around 1963 that the term Palestinian began to be used to describe Arabs. In fact, I've spoken with older Jewish Israelis who were born in Israel before 1948, and they've told me, yes, absolutely, we were known as the Palestinians. British soldiers and others would talk to us and always called us the Palestinians, meaning Jews who had ties to the land. And at the same time, I've spoken with older Arabs, and those who will be honest will tell you that no self-respecting Arab would have ever called himself a Palestinian before 1948. Before the establishment of the modern state of Israel, they did not call themselves Palestinians. Another interesting point to note, one of Israel's first newspapers, the Jerusalem Post, based in Jerusalem, founded in 1932 during the British Mandate, was known as the Palestinian Post. In 1950, it changed its name to the Jerusalem Post. You can look at old newspaper clippings and see the references to Palestine and Palestinians, all of which refer to the Jews in the land. The Palestine Symphony, for example, in 1936 consisted of 73 musicians, all of whom were Jews. It's essential to note that there's no historical entity known as ancient Palestine. It is, in fact, the ancient land of Israel. Now, okay, I will have to admit there is truth that there is Palestine. Palestine does exist. And I know of at least 14 cities with the name Palestine, also pronounced Palestine. There's Palestine, West Virginia, Texas, Tennessee, Pennsylvania, Ohio, North Carolina, Palestine, Mississippi, Palestine, Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, Connecticut, Arkansas, and Palestine, Alabama. And last but not least, a city called Palestine in the nation of Haiti. But in the Middle East, nope, no such thing as Palestine. On the heels of the Holocaust, Jews returned back to their ancient promised land as the prophets foretold. Before the establishment of the modern state of Israel in 1948, the UN Partition Resolution in 1947 not only authorized the establishment of Israel, but also allowed Arabs in the area west of the Jordan to form their own independent state adjacent to Israel. The Arab population declined the partition proposal very, very aggressively, missing the opportunity to establish their own state in 1948 by rejecting this proposal. In contrast, the Jewish community accepted the partition, leading to the establishment of Israel on May 14, 1948. Consequently, Arabs in the West Bank came under Jordanian control, and those in Gaza came under Egyptian control. Following the UN's decision, Arabs initiated a conflict against Israel, with 5 Arab nations and the local Arab populace launching an attack on the newly formed Jewish state, and ultimately was facing defeat. Despite the opportunity for peace and the establishment of an independent Arab state, they opted for conflict. Israelis often refer to the right of return, or to make aliyah, which is the process of relatives of Jews to return to the ancient homeland. The Egyptian-born Yasser Arafat joined what was to become known as the Palestinian Liberation Organization, or the PLO, which embraced and made very popular the identity of being a people called Palestinians, with a right to their ancient homeland called Palestine. In the same way, Joseph Goebbels, the propagandist of the Nazi regime, said, "If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it." In this case, the lie is the ancient Palestinians. Arafat began to aggressively push the Palestinian right of return, in the same way that Israelis had the same right of return. The difference is that Jews actually have a history and connection to the land spanning thousands of years. But Arafat was able to convince enough people that they had the same right, even though it's not true. It's crucial to understand this right of return and its significance in Arafat's stance to convince world leaders to be pro-Palestinian. Arafat contended that approximately 4 million Arabs and their descendants were displaced by Israel in 1948, a claim which is utterly baseless and false. Initially, about 200,000 Arabs left their homes in the land of Israel in the War of 1948, with very few, if any, being forcibly removed by Israelis. The majority of Arabs left voluntarily, as the surrounding Arab nations seemed to have sure victory, they thought, in the 1948 Israel War of Independence. Of course, they would all be wrong. They thought Israel would be totally destroyed and that they could just move back into their homes after the destruction of the Jews. After 1948, Arab leaders never allowed those who left their homes to resettle in other lands, which is common to all refugees all over the world. We see a huge contrast to how Jews treated their own people and then what the Arabs did with their own people. After the War of Independence in 1948, Arab countries cast huge numbers of Jews from their countries. And even though conservative estimates suggest that twice as many Jews became refugees as Arabs, they were still resettled in Israel without the need of any refugee camps. Later, when Arafat passed away in 1994, his contemporaries continued to push the demand for billions in reparations for so-called Palestinian refugees, which is ignoring the billions of dollars worth of property left behind by Jews in their countries of origin. Instead of facilitating the resettlement of Arabs who left Israel in 1948, Arab leaders have constantly insisted on keeping them confined to refugee camps all across the Middle East. And despite numerous proposals and international aid for their absorption into Arab host countries, these leaders have constantly rejected all solutions to let them leave. While the number of Arab refugees pales in comparison to the global displacement figures we've seen in history, Arab leaders refuse to seek resolutions, and this underscores their long-term objective, not peaceful coexistence with Israel, but its total annihilation. That's what the phrase Palestine means, the complete annihilation of Israel. When we hear the phrase Palestinian or Palestine, you need to also understand at the heart of their rewriting of history and reality is their denial of the historical existence of the Jewish temple on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. This is what it's really all about. This denial, coupled with the myth that Muhammad ascended to heaven from the Temple Mount, reflects a broader deception aimed at undermining Jewish historical, religious, and cultural claims to Jerusalem. Despite the hundreds of references to Jerusalem and the Jewish nation of Israel in the Hebrew Scriptures, as well as overwhelming historical and archaeological evidence that supports the presence of two Jewish temples on the Temple Mount, Palestinians and those who blindly follow them deny the truth in favor of propaganda. So my prayer for you, for Christians everywhere, for you watching this, is that you would know the truth. Of course, we love these Arabs that call themselves Palestinians. We believe God has a great plan for them, not to resettle or recreate a separate nation to replace Israel, but as the Bible teaches, any foreigner in the land who will lay down their idols and worship the true God of Israel and embrace the covenant given to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, if these Arabs will follow the ways of the Lord, they'll be blessed in the land. As believers, we aren't surprised at the lies against God's chosen nation. And despite international media pushing narratives to undermine Israel's enduring existence, we know all of this aligns with God's plan for history. Therefore, it is imperative for believers to discern truth from falsehood, seeking accurate information to counter ongoing biases. In the face of adversity, let us remain steadfast in the truth, anchored in the knowledge of God's sovereign plan for Israel's future, as we see in the scriptures. Ma'oz Israel Ministry has been helping Jews and Arabs in the land of Israel for nearly 50 years. Please stand with us during this time and help make a lasting legacy for Israel for years to come. For Ma'oz Israel, I'm Kobe Ferguson. Shalom, shalom.
You can provide much-needed aid to Israelis impacted by the war. Go to israelneedsme.com and make a generous donation today.
You want to know about what's happening in Israel right now? Do you want to understand biblical truths and understand the rich culture of the people and the land itself, the land of Israel? Then click on the link now and subscribe to our YouTube channel to learn about these things and much, much more. Subscribe now.